Here's the best way to start a fight in the One Piece fanbase, because there are certain things that are practically guaranteed to start a war. For example, just ask the question, who's better, Zoro or Sanji? Or better yet, go to a crowded convention hall and just yell Yamato. Don't even elaborate, just say the name and watch the chaos unfold. But I genuinely think that the best method is to ask, who would win in a fight, Shanks or Mihawk? This deceptively simple question has given rise to some of the most toxic debates I have ever seen on the internet. So we're going to settle this question once and for all using fictional facts and fictional science. Because it's not a simple question, and the answer actually changes depending on what criteria you choose to apply. Are we going by who's beaten who? Are we judging this based on haki or bounties or general positions in the world? Or are we judging it by who's the better swordsman? And is that really all there is to it? And the answer to all of the above is yes, ? But at the outset, most power scaling debates can be solved by comparing the CVs of both fictional fighters in question. So here is a complete list of everyone who Mihawk has beaten in the series. Number 1. Zoro. And that concludes a list of everyone that Mihawk has defeated. To contrast that, here is a complete list of everyone who Shanks has beaten in the series. Number 1. Eustace Kid. And that concludes a list of everyone that Shanks has defeated. Pre-time skip Zoro and post-time skip Kid. So it's about the same level of impressive. But unfortunately, it doesn't give us much to work with. So thankfully, we do have their extended CVs. For Shanks, whilst not defeating these opponents, he did clash with Whitebeard, splitting the skies open, and Shanks also blocked Sakazuki and scared him away. And what's notable is that Sakazuki is not the only admiral Shanks has caused to soil his pristine navy pants. And I have to admit, that's pretty impressive. So now let's see what Mihawk's got. Mihawk had a brief clash with Vista where he got to see some flowers, so that was a lovely day out. Mihawk also beat up to Okama during Marineford, who you can see here in color and speaking French. Mihawk also defeated a very large iceberg and cut up lots of Don Krieg ships. So I don't doubt his power at all when it comes to inanimate objects. But the scale here is, it's certainly getting tipped in favor of Shanks. But something else to consider is that they both have off-screen CVs as well. Off-screen, Shanks has confronted Kaido and done something powersome enough to even gain Kaido's respect. As in the famed "How high will your ceiling go" panel, you can see a Shanks and an Odin, but no Mihawk. Suspicious. Then again, I doubt that Mihawk would have ever wanted to fight against Kaido, because Kaido uses a weapon that is blunt and heavy, quite the opposite of sharp and, well, admittedly probably very heavy as well. Yoru is a beast. But really, the biggest thing on either CV is the fact that Shanks fought equally against Mihawk, and Mihawk fought equally against Shanks. So this could be a situation where two friends are using each other as fake references on their respective CVs. But according to purely CV-based evidence, Shanks has presented more power. But is it really all about demonstrated power? Because probably the most common answer to Shanks versus Mihawk is that yes, Shanks is stronger, but Mihawk is a better swordsman. Shanks is generally more powerful, but when playing the game of sword blades, Mihawk is more skilled. And this then leads to the question of what is a swordsman, which is very philosophy, much think. But before getting into that, consider this. Scenario 1. If Shanks were stronger than Mihawk and always uses a sword, and if Mihawk refuses to fight Shanks for whatever reason, can we honestly still claim that Mihawk is the world's greatest swordsman? It's like winning a world title in something. Insert a sport, like let's say lawn bowls. Can't think of any others. But Mihawk's position here is like becoming the world champion of sword bowls, but then refusing to ever play anyone again. It's almost cowardly. If Shanks was stronger, then even without an arm, Mihawk has work to do. Which leads us to scenario 2. Mihawk is genuinely stronger than Shanks and refuses to fight because without the arm, it's just not fair. And to that I say, well, Zoro lost an eye, so is Mihawk going to refuse to fight him as well? Are we now in a position where we need to cancel Mihawk for being an ableist? Probably not, because to be fair, eyes are canonically worth less than arms in the One Piece world. Because characters like Fujitora prove that you can be an amazing badass sword boy without them. But then again, I would also argue that characters like Shanks do the exact same thing but for missing arms. Characters like Kid do not help this. But Shanks, he good. So I would suggest that, instead of whinging about it, Mihawk, you should do something honorable. Take a page from the Book of Katakuri and equalize things by cutting your own arm off. Make it a challenge again. I mean, what are you really saving that arm for? All of the other swordsmen that you never fight? But this is where things get tricky. Because exactly what are the rules and requirements of being a swordsman? I mean, assumedly no punching is a good start, which is actually much less of a problem for Shanks these days. Haki is obviously allowed, but are devil fruits allowed in this sacred art form? Come to think of it, all of the greatest swordsmen are all a bunch of traditionalists, fighting completely fruit nude, so maybe. I imagine imagine the only hard rule is that you need to use a blade or blades plural as a primary/sole weapon. And a new question now, has Shanks ever not done that? Every time he's gone and done something super awesome was with his sword Griffin. And the one time he lost his arm was coincidentally the one time that he didn't have his sword with him. Actually, why didn't he have the sword? Just before saving Luffy, Shanks was shown with it, so it seems like an odd thing to discard in a time of need. So I guess the thing is that logically, it's inarguable that Mihawk is a better swordsman than Shanks. By the very definition of his title, he has to be. So then we ask the question, is Shanks a swordsman? This is quite a controversial topic amongst chronically online individuals such as myself, because in the SBS of Volume 83, a reader asked, what's the name of Redhead Shanks' sword? And Oda replied, apparently it's called Griffin. He says apparently as if he's not the one who named it. Oftentimes Oda considers himself to be more of a historian of the One Piece world than an author, but he continues, we've known Shanks since the very first chapter, but how does he actually fight? Is Oda hinting that he often doesn't use Griffin to fight? If so, that completely goes against literally everything else he's ever shown us, because even in Film Red, that's all Shanks uses. And using the evidence we have, I have no choice but to declare Shanks as a swordsman, which means that this fight would go to Mihawk if it were based on that criteria. But there's also more things. Bounty scaling is another very common solution to fictional problems, mainly via the theory that bigger number equals bigger power. Yes, I am very smart. I will say it's a bit more nuanced than that, especially in this particular situation, because Shanks has a bounty of 4 billion and then some other numbers, whilst Mihawk has a bounty of 3.5 billion and also some other numbers, meaning that there's an approximately 460 million berry gap between them, which is less than one Usopp's worth. It used to be close to Jinbei, but he got a big upgrade and now he is a very pricey fish. But the point is that it's not a big gap, at least not taking into consideration everything that Shanks is. An Emperor of the Sea who commands quite possibly the single most powerful pirate crew in existence today. He also has an extended grand fleet, but to be fair, they're more of a handicap. Shanks is also of world noble heritage and the leading candidate to become the next pirate king, and one of the single greatest living threats to the world government today. Meanwhile, over here you've got Mihawk, and he's just some dude on his own with a massive toilet, and the world government believe that Shanks is only one Usopp's worth more of a threat than Mihawk. If Mihawk wanted to be an emperor, he could be. In fact, Mihawk has the highest currently known bounty of any character who is not an emperor, and a bounty higher than 2 of those who are. It's not about a lack of power, intelligence, or resources, it's just a lack of drive. This dude just wants to live a quiet life in his castle with his toilet, his big titty goth GF, and mandrels, lots and lots of mandrels. So if we're being honest here, and we are, Mihawk's bounty, yeah, it might be lower, but it's significantly more impressive because it speaks purely to his raw strength. So one of 2 things happened here. Either Shanks is an underachiever or Mihawk is an overachiever, and I think it's the latter, which, perhaps controversially, would lead me to pick Mihawk if we were using bounty scaling, because just he alone is considered to be worth almost the entire value of an Emperor of the Sea. But to something more combat relevant, we also need to have the Haki discussion. Shanks has Conqueror's Haki, full stop. Mihawk, as of this recording, has displayed no such ability. Unfortunate. Although being realistic, look, he almost certainly does. I mean, if Zoro has it, then Mihawk surely has it as well, which I only bring up because a common argument for Shanks' victory is, and I quote, this man can scare an admiral with cock alone. Cock, or COC, is an abbreviation for Conqueror's Haki, but I always read it as cock because I'm one of those people. I always read LOL as lol. COC also isn't very good because if we're using the color of translation, then it should be color of the Supreme King, which would be Kosk, which admittedly isn't too much better. Speaking vaguely of men's lower regions, and this is surprisingly relevant, but Oda was once asked a very pertinent question in the SBS of Volume 73. Hey Oda, in all of these fight scenes, why doesn't anybody go for the men's groins? Doesn't that seem like the quickest path to victory? To which Oda replies, true, that is a vital area. Just imagine legends among men, Whitebeard, Shanks, Mihawk, staring each other down, bearing their weighty ideals, and trying to whack each other in the balls. Is that the kind of manga you want to read? Honestly, yeah, kind of, yeah. But I just find it interesting that when Oda is thinking of legends of this world, the 3 key names that he lands on are Whitebeard, Shanks, and Mihawk. So no, Mihawk is not currently confirmed to have Conqueror's Haki, but he almost certainly does. And look, in the unlikely circumstance that he doesn't, that again only speaks to his ridiculous raw power. However, by observable evidence alone, Shanks would have to take this using the Haki criteria, which puts us in a bit of a problematic situation. In terms of observable strength, Shanks wins. In terms of the semantics of being a swordsman, Mihawk wins. Mihawk also wins using bounty scaling, and Shanks wins via observable Haki. So we're at 2-all, and we need a tiebreaker. And for this, I've I've decided to use the oldest known form of power scaling, which essentially boils down to asking you which one you like better. I asked all of you to vote for who you think would win in a community poll, and Shanks won in a landslide. 78% of all Grand Fleet members believe he would be the victor, compared to a mere 22% of those who think that Mihawk would take the fight. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because I also conducted a second poll, but this time just asking which character you like better. And there is a shockingly strong correlation with the results here. There's about a 5% difference, but as a whole, the results of which character you like are also reflected in which character people think would win in a fight. Now, admittedly, correlation does not prove causation. I just thought it was fascinating that the numbers were so very similar. And I have to say there is an undeniable bias towards Shanks in the fanbase, because he even won the who would be a better dinner guest poll, which I seriously object to. Mihawk is the perfect dinner guest. He's chill, he's polite, he's well spoken, he knows a lot about like wine and stuff, whereas Shanks is just gonna show up with a case of cheap beer, take his shoes off, and invite all of his friends that you've never heard of to come and trash your place. This is how I can tell I'm old, by the way, because my idea of social interaction is having people over for dinner. However, I do think there's quite a bit of potential to sway this into Mihawk's favor in the future, because thinking about it, he's a character who has yet to perform a single named attack in the series. Despite that, my congratulations to Mr. Shanks for winning what is admittedly a pointless online argument. And keep in mind that we may very well never get a solid answer to this. Mihawk and Shanks are probably never going to fight each other directly. And in the end, I think our greatest enemy here is the Lord of the Coast for denying us that battle. Bad fish. Bad.